Hello and welcome back to OC Avery, and welcome to episode 2 of the Natives in Norwich Zoom Room. This week we are joined by the Roberts and Jones partnership who keep Norwich. So that's Orwell Roberts and Richard Jones. So firstly I'd like to thank them for coming on the show and filming the episode you're just about to see. So these guys keep Norwich and have a total of 95 years experience between the two in keeping Norwich Canaries. So really have a lot of experience with them and know what they're talking about when it comes to Norwich, as well as other birds. They've also created their own line of feeders and also keep native birds. So there's a bit of something for everyone in this video. So make sure you stay tuned and watch the whole thing through. I hope you enjoy it, and welcome to episode 2. Okay. Hello and welcome back to the Natives in Norwich Zoom Room. This is episode 2 with the Roberts and Jones partnership. So, chaps, please feel free to introduce yourselves and just tell us a quick bit about the birds you keep.
I'm the Jones half of the partnership, Richard and Arwell, teacher.
Yeah, I'm Arwell Roberts. I've got the Norwich here at the moment, and just a couple of feeders. Yes.
Fantastic.
I've got the other feeders here, and we've got some natives and some pairs for muling as well.
Oh, very good. So, Orwell, we'll start with you first. How did you get started? What age, and did any family keep birds before you?
Got started when I was about 9 years old. Previously to that, me and the lads in school, we kept a few pigeons and stuff, and my mother wasn't keen because they were messing all over the clothes on the line and stuff, and so they persuaded me to get a few canaries. My uncle had canaries in Gwalchmai. He was a bit of a dealer. He dealt in this and dealt in that, so that's how I really got started with the birds. Yeah, that I was about 9 years old. That was about 1974.
Fantastic. And Richard?
1972. On my 10th birthday, I was given a bit of money, and I decided to get myself a pet. And my grandmother informed me that the chap next door to her kept birds. So I went over there to buy a bird, and without knowing at the time, he was a Norwich breeder. So he sold me a cockbird. We couldn't get a hen because it was in the season. So I had to get a border hen, and I paired them together and had 3 youngsters. And I sold the youngsters for £1.50 each.
Fantastic. Well, yeah, it sounds like you've definitely been to the Norwich since the start then.
Yeah, it's 49 years. Between us, I think we've got over 95 years experience keeping canaries, and we still don't know anything about them.
Wow, well, I guess there's a lot to learn as well, isn't there? Every day's a learning day with birds. Fantastic.
Each season, I think you keep learning.
What was that, sorry?
Each season, I think you keep learning because different things come up and you have to sort them out, and we're learning all the time.
Yeah, well, no, it's. I think everyone's learning. It's even some of the guys who, they're looking to retire from the birds that they've been in for years and still learning. So, obviously, Richard, you started with Norwich from the start. What about you, Orwell?
Well, about 2 years after starting, to begin with, I had boarders. Bought them from a lad who lived near us, and he had like a little chicken coop he had, and we used to have to crawl into it, and he had cages in there, and that's where we started with the boarders. And then a couple of years later, I went to Richard's and got a pair of Norwich off Richard. Bought the cockbird in the nest feather, and he was a nice bird actually, very good feather quality. I can picture him now, and nice bird. He won quite a few shows for me at the time. And the little green Norwich, I think she was probably a Norwich cross hen, that I paired together. Yeah.
Oh wow! So it's something you've done for a while then, like
Yeah.
that, and obviously worked on it. So, how long have you been breeding Norwich as a partnership and showing as a partnership?
31 years. This will be the 31st year now as
Wow!
partners. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Very long partnership then.
Well,
That's great.
and I can tell you, in the 31 years, yeah, we've never had an argument on my mother's life. Never. Yeah.
Wow.
We discuss things, but I get my own way in the end because I'm the senior in this partnership.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's all about cooperation there, so that's very good, and obviously it works well as well, and the results are shown from there. So, what do you look for in a Norwich, just overall?
Well, they're totally different today to how they were when we first started in the early 70s. They were much bigger then, with a coarser feather, and people were concentrating too much about the width of the head. They're much smaller birds now for the showing. The feather quality is superb in some of these Norwiches that win now. Short and copy, with a tail as short as possible and neat wing carriage. But the biggest thing I think is the balance in the bird, isn't it? If you have a bird with a long tail or long flight feathers or long beak, it puts the balance totally off,
Yeah,
and it spoils the bird. But today, I think, when you look at winners in the shows today, I think they're spot on now. But we try and go by the ideal, obviously, but it's difficult.
yeah,
It's a lot. It's a lot to do with feather as well. There's nothing worse than too soft a feather, because with a too soft a feather, you tend to get the crease in the back of the neck, and you tend to, what we call is a mask. Some people call it creases around the face area. It's very off-putting, that, well, for me personally, to be honest with you. And one thing, when we go and judge birds, we rarely ever disagree on what birds that win the shows, because we do tend to like the same type of bird, and we can see the same faults in the bird as well. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, definitely. It sounds very
Yeah.
good, especially considering you obviously work as a partnership as well. So actually having the same standard in mind and the same aim is very useful, I imagine. And then obviously judging the birds as well. You can judge similar birds in your own shed. So how many pairs do you both put down each season of the Norwich to start with?
It's changed over the years. Some seasons years ago, we'd only have maybe a dozen pairs. Sometimes it'd go up to 20. This year, there's been a slight change. We've got 30 pairs going down this year, and 45 pairs of feeders. There's going to be a lot of work, and we'll probably change that back to about 20 pairs the following year.
Yeah, is that between the two of you, or is that each?
Well, what we've done in the past, one of us has kept the yellow cocks and the buff hens, and the other one's kept the buff cocks and the yellow hens. This year, they've all gone to Arwell's place, the Norwich, and I'm going to concentrate on the feeding, my side.
Right, okay.
The eggs will be coming over to me. We only live half a mile away from each other. The eggs will come to me, and then I'll put them into the feeders.
Oh,
We'll just let the Norwich
that's
a week or so, and then
that's very ideal. Yeah.
Well, we hope so. I hope it's going to work.
Yeah.
Is that a first time this year trialing that?
Yes, this time, yeah.
Right, okay.
We'll see how we go.
Yeah, it'll be interesting results. I'd like to hear about that after the breed season, how that went actually.
If we don't have any luck, we won't be telling you at all.
No.
We'll let you know if we get a lot of luck.
Yeah, that's great. Just actually on that with the separation of birds. So is it? So one of you has the yellow cocks and buff hens, and the other has the buff cocks and yellow hens.
Yeah,
That's what
Right.
we used
that's
to
what we used to do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
used to
that's what
do.
we used to- Yeah.
Okay. Just a question on that as well. So, was that your only sort of separation, or did maybe one keep the light birds and one keep the dark birds?
No, it
No,
was
we had a mixture of both, to be perfectly honest with you. I had some greens, Richard had some greens there, and we breed a lot of whites as well. So we had a mixture, we had a bit of mixture of everything, to be honest with you. Yeah.
Fantastic. No, that's great. It sounds a good system you've got in place as well, and obviously living quite close sounds very ideal. So onto your feeders then. Could you tell us about what feeders you use and overall what everything you do with your feeders?
Yeah, I've got a few I can show you in a bit. We used to keep the smaller types of canaries for feeding, Fives and Gloucesters and Newglers. Quite a few of them were good feeders, but quite a few of them were bad feeders, and we got quite annoyed some years. So we decided to form a type of feeder for ourselves. So we started off by crossing Norwich cockbirds with lizard hens and Irish and Fives together. The youngsters from those two pairings were put together the following year, and we crossed them then with gold dimorphics and timberados. Yeah, some new colours, but we only kept the youngsters from pairs that excelled in feeding. If they were youngsters from pairs that didn't excel in feeding, they went. We sold them. So, unlike keeping Fives, you put your best to best when you're showing Fives, and you might have a couple of youngsters you put together and their parents weren't good feeders, then they won't feed. But we were able to produce these over a period of about 5 or 6 years, and now we cross them together, and we've started supplying other fanciers now with feeders. I can show you a couple of them.
Yeah, if you've got them to hand now, I'd love to take a look.
Can you see them?
Fantastic. Yes, definitely. They are brilliant.
They're two variegated hens there.
Wow.
There's a cinnamon and a white there. And if you notice the markings on the white, it's still showing some markings from the original lizards 6 or 7 years ago. Can you see them?
Yes, I've got you. They look fantastic. I mean, I'd be definitely interested in a pair of those as feeders. Wow.
There is quite a few dark ones as well that don't look quite as stunning as them, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah,
I've tried to see some nicer looking ones.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, you got
to be honest with you, they're superb feeders. We had a pair of red balls this year, and the hen wouldn't sit and incubate. And we put the eggs under these feeders, and there was no trouble at all feeding the red ball young.
Oh, excellent. Yeah. So I presume they go through feeding all of your Norwich.
Oh yes, yeah,
Yep.
Yeah.
Excellent. So with breeding your Norwich, then how do you breed them? Would you rather breed them in pairs, or would you rather run one cock to several hens, or something?
Ideally, we breed them in pairs, but obviously you get the odd cock that will go with more than one hen. What you find with Norwich is that they're not free breeders. They won't breed with men. You don't get many cocks that'll breed with a lot of hens, where you get some border and fife lads that'll run one cock with 7, 8 hens. You'll be able to do that very easily with Norwich. You tend to stick to pairs and the odd trio. Yeah.
Right, that's fantastic. So, just completely pairs, and then that's because the Norwich aren't as free breeders, like you say. Then,
Yeah.
Very good. Where else are we? So, what would you say your biggest successes to date with your breeding season? Do you have maybe a particularly memorable breeding season?
2018 was a good one. Yeah. We had 15 pairs at Norwich, and we ended up with over 60 young ones. I always think a success is how many you get on average for each pair that you've got. Some breeders will tell you they've had 140, 150 youngsters, but they don't tell you they've got 60 pairs.
Yeah.
So the average that year for us was 4 young Norwich per hen. And that to me is a good season, because they are difficult. It is hard work with them.
Yeah, that's excellent.
And that year I think we had about 45 fetus youngsters as well that year. This coming year we didn't have a good season with the Norwich, but we ended up with about 85 chicks from the feeders, and a few natives.
Excellent. Yeah. So is that was that between both of you then, or was that maybe at your shed?
15 pairs between us, yeah.
Oh right, okay.
15 pairs between us, yeah.
Fantastic.
This year, where if we don't get an average of 4 per hen this year, it's going to be a disaster with 30 hens.
Yeah, but that's a lot of pairs though as well. Like you say, if you get that many 120 young Norwich to deal with, if you do get the average of 4, but I guess it gives you a better option, more birds to choose from for the shows, and obviously developing the line.
You're bound to get a few of them that won't do anything at all of the season. Out of 30 hens, you're going to get 2 or 3 that won't do anything. You're going to get infertile eggs. You're going to get hens that won't sit. It's going to be difficult.
Yeah,
but we'll give it a go.
Yeah, well, rise to the challenge and see what happens. So, is there a Norwich between both of you which sticks out, which we're very happy with? Maybe, it's a particular bird that was very successful on the show bench.
We've bred a few birds from what I can remember that were decent birds that won quite a bit on the show bench. From recollection, we bred when we were novice, we bred a very good variegated buff cock, and we bred some good birds afterwards, some greens, some nice whites, but I always think the best bird we've ever bred is to come. That's when you keep birds like this, you're always striving to get better and better and better. So that's my thought, is the best bird is going to come.
Yeah. So you get in you're having those best birds for the moment, but you're always aiming to get an even better one.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
Fantastic. What would be the best tip you could give someone who's breeding Norwich or looking to breed Norwich?
Don't. Start off with a small bird like an Irish fancy or a fife for a few years first. Keep off the Norwich for a few years until you get the experience, because you need the patience of a saint with them. They are so difficult. Just like Yorkshires or Canaries and Lancashires, all the big breeds are difficult to work with. But if you fall in love with the Norwich like we did, and persevere and have plenty of patience, you'll get there in the end. But it'll be disaster after disaster for you.
Yeah. So how do you go about getting your Norwich fit then, and in the breeding condition?
Well, obviously, it's a lot to do with feeding. We don't use any natural any lighting. Might give them light in the daytime when the days are dark, but we don't give them any night light or early morning artificial lights. So that's and it's the feeding up. We use a lot of Heath, Craker, tonic grains. They seem to like that, and it tends to get them into good condition.
Fantastic. And what sort of size cages do you get them fit in?
Well, the Norwich are kept in long flight cages. Some of them are 8 foot long. And Arwell's got an inside flight as well, which he puts in the centre of the shed in the winter. The cockbirds are kept in doubles with a perch at each end. But the feeders are kept in a flight. The hens go in a 9 foot long flight all through the winter. The cockbirds are kept in the 8 foot flight cages. But I've had to separate all the cockbirds now, the feeding cockbirds, because they're getting aggressive now. They're attacking each other. There's feathers all over the place. So I've had to put them all into single cages now to calm them down.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, if that's working.
I think we've got about 180 cages at the moment, and 5 flights. One of them can be opened into a long flight. 3 of them, sorry, can be opened into a long. You need the space to get them fit, but the Norwich aren't a flighty bird, so they're not going to move about in a flight anyway.
No.
They'll just sit on the perch.
Yeah. No, that's I guess that's typical of these.
You've got some yourself, haven't you?
Yes, yeah, I've got 2 myself, and the only way I can get them moving is having actually mules and native native finches in with them and actually chasing them. That's the only way that I can get them to actually move off of a perch. So that that takes some doing, but we'll see. It's early days for me with these guys at least. Well, we'll talk about your natives actually and your muling attempts. So what mules and mules are you aiming for this year? What are your parents?
I thought you'd be more interested in them. I thought you'd be more interested in them.
Yeah.
Well, each year we keep some kind of native and do some muling, but we haven't got the space because of the space we need for the Norwich and the feeders. But last year we had 8 young linnets, 3 young redpolls, 8 or 9 mules, which were linnet and goldfinch mules. This year we've got a couple of unflighted bullfinch hens to go with 2 redpoll cocks that we bred this year. We've got 2 goldfinch cocks which are going with yellow Norwich hens. We've chosen 2 small Norwich hens, and they're lively birds and fitter birds than the normal hens we've got. We did sell 2 pairs of redpolls to go to South Wales, but because of the lockdown we can't get them down there. So we'll keep them again, I think, this year and breed from them as well. Yeah.
Excellent. So that's 2 goldfinch mule pairs and 2 redpoll bullfinch hybrid pairs.
Yeah, and the 2 pairs of normal redpolls as well.
Yeah, fantastic. Best of luck with them. Yeah, quite a few. I mean,
they did quite well last year. Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's something else in the shed, isn't it? It's just some other kind of interest, and we've always kept British on and off, because I started off about same age as you now with breeding greenfinches.
Yeah.
And I used to sell them off for £1.50 each to get money to buy the food. The trouble with Norwich is when we were in school, they were expensive for us to buy. So the first hen I had was my father bought it for me, and I loaned a cockbird for a month to go with it. And I had 2 youngsters, and one of the youngsters is the bird that Arwell bought off me in 1974.
Wow.
I've got a copy here of Cage and Avery birds from 1950s. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now the average wage in this country in the 1950s was £7. Equivalent to today, it's about £500. And there's somebody advertising in cage birds in 1956, offering £15 for a yellow Norwich cockbird. Yeah, which was over twice the weekly wage. which would be
Wow.
over £1,000 today. Yeah.
Wow, that must have been a quality
So I'm
bird for
glad
those
they've come
days.
down a bit in price.
Yes. or if they just stayed at £15, that would be ideal. If they just stayed at that, that's. But
Everybody keep them.
yeah, everyone would. You're dead right. I found that when getting a few Norwich, they weren't. Yeah, you can't get a Norwich for £10-15. Now I was looking at they probably start at about 30 per Norwich, and then again that's not really show quality birds either. Obviously, cost more for the better quality birds as well. So, what brand of seed do you use in the egg food?
Or else the experts on the food.
We use country white seed. We use country white canary with no rake for the birds. Even the British get that, to be perfectly honest with you, and they're fit and healthy on it. And soft food, we use Deli Nature Dry. We were using Kings, but we had a bit of problem getting hold of it in the middle of the season last year. And so we use Deli Nature Dry. We use soak seed. We use country white soak seed with the mug beans, and we use another make of soak seed as well. I'm not sure what make it is, but it's got the groats in it. The groats. We don't tend to let our soak seed germinate too much because we tend to think that it's got a lot of germinates at that time. So we tend to soak our seed for about 24 hours and mix it in with the soft food.
Right. Okay. Yeah, and I'm going to say that's one of the issues with germinated seed, at least, is actually the seed going sour or mold growing on it, and then obviously that has a detrimental impact on the birds rather than a positive impact, which it should ideally have, especially when feeding to youngsters. What vitamins would you recommend people use, and what medication do you guys use?
Do you want me to answer that?
Yes, yeah.
Well, we don't tend to use a lot of vitamins, to be perfectly honest with you. Years ago, me and Richard on a Sunday morning, we'd go and see two bird fanciers, Jerry Swift and the late Dave Oldham. And we used to go there. We used to go to Jerry Swift's place first, and we'd go there. And it used to be really warm in the shed, and the birds used to have their vitamins on the Sunday morning. And then we'd go from there then to Dave Oldham's place. And first thing he'd say, hope you've got a coat, because he'd always have the doors open, no vitamins. If a bird was ill, it died. So thinking back on them, we're probably in the middle there, aren't we? We don't give any vitamins at all. We will give a sick bird some Thailand to try and get him over it. But if it dies, it dies. But we do give them Doxypan 20 about a month before the breeding season, just to try and stop getting the black spots and so forth.
Yeah. Okay. I know a lot of fanciers, myself included, actually use vitamins with the malt. Do you use anything like you don't use vitamins yourself? So what do you supplement through the malt, maybe to help them if they need that help?
Well, people tend to use different things, different times of the year. We
Yeah.
don't. Yeah. Our birds will get egg food and soak seed and conditioning seed all through the year. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they need it to get into condition before the season. They need it in the season because they're working hard. They need it in the malts because they're losing the feathers and there's so much growth of the new feathers. And then they need it in the winter when the weather's bad. So why do you change the food all through the year? We give them egg food, soak seed, a good seed mix, green food, all through the year. We don't stop the soak seed and the egg food at all.
Right. Okay. No,
If you give them a good balanced diet all through the year, they don't need any extras in vitamins. And the thing is, if you've got a bird that's ill and you keep it alive on medicines, that bird will produce ill youngsters the following year. And then you're creating then a weak stud of birds. You know, if a bird
Yeah, completely understand.
isn't healthy in the wild, it would die in the winter. But if in the bird shed you keep it alive to breed the following year, and I don't think it's a good idea at all.
No, I think that's a really good thing to take on board. Actually, with you're building a hard stud, so if the birds are, the birds are too weak or ill, then they die off, and you aren't actually breeding those weak birds. So that's excellent. I think that's something that I'll be definitely taking on board. Trying to not use as much medication. I try and keep off it as much as possible because I don't want to do that. But I also don't like to see something suffering. But there's all the different sides.
You see, in other countries, they're using a lot more medicines and antibiotics than we are. Now, if you buy birds, say, in the World Show and bring them over to this country, you don't know what they've been on, and people lose them. A local fancier we had spent a fortune on Siberian bullfinches, colour mutations, quite a few pairs, and he brought them over back to this country, and he lost them all.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So and that because they was relying on the medication.
Knowing what the other fancier fed them and what antibiotics they were on, so they died. Yeah.
It's unfortunate, but I guess that's it. And actually making the birds rely on medication and supplements is probably something we should avoid doing. Like you say there, with people bringing birds over that are relying on it, then when they don't have it, they lose them. So the birds aren't actually strong.
Yeah.
So when did you start showing as a partnership? Were you just breeding as a partnership to start with, or did you breed and show as a partnership around the same time?
No, we showed straight away. Yeah, we did have our own studs of Norwich before then, and then we just got together and we showed straight away within 12 months. Yeah.
Fantastic. What was your most memorable win on the show bench?
I think it's getting best canary with an Norwich at our local shows. It's got to be quite a good Norwich to get best canary, and you've got so many big classes in the 5 section and the Irish section these days. And for a Norwich to get best canary, we've had that quite a few times. We had best green in Norwich Plainhead Club a few years ago. That was a nice bird. And we've had, I think it's the old wins that you first have, like yourself, that stick in your mind. When I was a novice, I had best Norwich and second best Norwich in Holyhead Show, a local show, which was quite a thing to do because I beat the champions as well, didn't I? And to get first and second best Norwich, that sticks in my mind more than anything.
Fantastic. Do you show any of your native birds, or are they just solely for having in the shed just as enjoyment in that sense rather than the showing side?
No, we show them. Yeah. We'd show them this, see if there was any shows.
Yeah. It's a shame. Obviously, we can't have the shows. We didn't have the shows when they should have happened this year. Hopefully, we might have them at the end of this year, but we'll have to see what happens there.
It'll be Stafford will in March.
No, Stafford won't be going on in March. We might be lucky to get the October one. We'll have to see what happens.
We really used to enjoy showing the birds in the national exhibition years ago when it was when they used to be in Bingley Hall in Birmingham, and then they moved over to the NEC, and we had one here in Telford as well. We used to love showing there, but it finished that it closed down and they stopped having it. I feel the national exhibition now in Stafford, it's always too early for us because we breed our birds. We don't tend to have a good show team by that date, which is about normally the second week in October, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's early for us, to be perfectly honest with you. But
the old
you know,
national used to be the first weekend in December for years. And there's a bit of a difference. So those few weeks makes a hell of a difference to the Norwich when he's coming up to the pin feathers in the head, which take ages. They're not at their best till December, to be honest.
Yeah, that's some feedback I've actually heard from quite a few different people saying the national exhibition is far too early for at least some of the canaries and mainly all of the native birds. But the only things we can actually show in the native section early October is really young bred that year from early clutches. That's something I'd found when my first show was the national exhibition in 2019, and I could only show a red pollard bred in the May because it was the only bird I actually had ready. By October, everything was coming through the side of the molt and wasn't in good shape for showing and just not got the weight to it. So I think the national really should be put on for about December, like you say, like the old one, for actually more success and more fanciers and more birds going in.
And the old nationals years ago, there were far more birds obviously entered.
yeah.
The Norwich section, you'd have 20 to 30 birds in a class. At the national these days, you're lucky to get half a dozen Norwich in one class.
Yeah.
That's made a big difference. There's less of us keeping them, isn't there?
Yeah, but you're dead right though. I think it's a hobby that's essentially dying because not as many young people are coming into it anymore.
Oh no, that's why it's nice to see somebody your age.
Yeah. I'm trying as much as possible to encourage other young people like myself to get into it. I mean, I love it. I spend all my time, or most of my time, sorting birds when I'm not having to do education or anything. So I encourage more people to get onto it, and hopefully it works within time. When you're showing, then, do you cover all of the classes, or is there a select few classes you aim for?
All of them, yeah.
Yep.
We try and specialize in whites and darks. And in the last few years, we've gone into cinnamons because I think if we don't keep more cinnamon Norwich, in a few years, we're going to lose them because there's not many about at all now. We've put the cinnamons in the last few years with the greens that we've got, and we've found a big difference in the feather quality. The cinnamon has boosted the feather quality totally.
Oh, but, fantastic.
Mainly greens and whites that we specialize in. We've got quite a few of them going down this year.
Excellent. Just on that with the cinnamons, actually, I had a variegated cinnamon Norwich, and I found that the feather quality was really quite good compared to a green, actually. So do you think that's something across
they say that years ago the borders fanciers used to bring a bit of cinnamon blood in to improve the feather quality, and it has improved ours in the greens, I must admit.
Yeah.
But cinnamon's a bit like Marmite. People either love them or they hate them.
Yeah. I personally love the cinnamons, and I'm looking to try and get a few in because I'd like to do some cinnamon mules actually with cinnamon red poles. But that's something for a different chat because that's a lot of work as well. But I do love the cinnamon Norwich. I think they're great birds. Any tips for anyone watching who wants to show Norwich?
Well, obviously the best tip is to make sure you've got, decent birds to show. Try and avoid the faults. Plenty of show cage training. Always make sure that your show cages are pristine when you show the bird. There's nothing worse. We judge sometimes, and the cages let the bird down. You don't tend to judge the cage, but if the cage doesn't look right, it does let the bird down slightly. So keep everything tip top. Like Owen Walsh said on the last meeting, showcase training is so important. There's nothing worse than a Norwich and it's pulling. You need to train them. They need to be in show cages quite a bit. And I like to leave them overnight in the show cage so they wake up in the show cage as well, to be honest with you. And obviously make sure that your bird can drink out of the hole. It puts his head through the hole so it can drink. We had one once and he wouldn't put his head through. This is many years ago. And it was a problem. You'd have to take a fountain with you to the show and stuff. But that's one thing we've done as well in the last year or so. We've taken fountains with us, especially, you know, if it's a long day and they're not going to get back to the cages on that day. We tend to stick a fountain, these small fountains on the cages, the ones the budgies have.
Yeah.
Stick them on the outside, and you know they're drinking well. Then, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
One thing as well, with Norwich, you go to the show in the morning, you'll fill the drinker up, and the first thing they do, they put their heads through and they bath. The heads are always wet, you know, so just a little bit of water in the bottom, but obviously you've got to make sure that they can get a drink as well. You know, it's a bit of a happy medium there, isn't it?
Yeah, so maybe like half filling the cup in that instance, just so it can get to its peak and have a drink, but not actually bathe. Yeah, I've had greenfinches do that at shows, and that obviously lets them down. It's got a soaking wet bird, and then they don't do anything. Yeah, is there anything else you'd like to mention, either of you? Just for anyone else watching, and any other tips and anything else like that?
One tip I'd like to suggest, is if you're starting with Norwich, a lot of people, they'll go somewhere like Stafford and they'll get a cock from one table, they'll get a hen from another table, and they'll mix and match. It's always better to go to a breeder and buy pairs and put them pairs together. So, you know, the birds are from the same line and breed from there. We're very lucky. We've got very good friends that when we need birds, we've got Graham Smith from Northampton. When we want light or clear birds, we go to him. If we want dark birds, we go to Brian Rayfield. We like that type of birds. And in fairness, the chap who helped us out with the whites in the beginning was Maurice Hennessy, and he had good whites, and we managed to get a few good whites off him. So go find your breeder, go to him and stick to him.
Yeah.
That's what I suggest. What do you
You're
suggest?
still getting the same bloodline then, aren't you? When you go back to the same place, you're topping up your bloodline. You're not getting something which is totally different, and then you lose your type. But Maurice Hennessy gave us 3 birds many, many years ago. 3 white birds, a mother and 2 daughters. They were superb birds. The feather quality was out of this world, and they were the basis of our whites. And he's a gentleman of a man, and he's helped us out over the years. And it's nice to have friends where you can go back and you say, "Now look, I'm looking for such and such," and they help you out, and you're getting the same bloodline back in. You're not going somewhere else where you're going to spoil the whole type of the bird.
Yeah. So with that, getting your outcrosses in, you would recommend going to a descendant of your line rather than a complete outcross.
Yeah. They're the only 3 people we buy Norwich off. We don't buy Norwich off anybody else, and this has been going on for some years now. The first green we had came from Brian Rayfield. Now, we didn't even have a green cockbird to put with her, so we put a clear buff cockbird with her that came from Graham Smith's place. And we had 6 green youngsters from this pair, and they were the basis of our greens. Now, we went back to Brian this year, and we picked up a couple of more birds, a cinnamon and a green. Brian's one of the few bird keepers that keeps a cinnamon Norwich. Well, he's the only supply that we've got if we need.
Yeah.
We're getting the blood, and we've noticed over the last few years, their birds and our birds look alike. It's like walking into our shed when we walk into their sheds. The type is there, it's the same. It's a stamp on the birds. So we won't go anywhere except to those 3 places to buy birds.
Excellent. No, that sounds great. That's something I look to do now, especially as I start to develop my lines of native birds. I'm trying to use the same sources rather than completely unrelated birds. And like you say, it can ruin them mixing too much. But it's something I need to learn over time. I've been breeding like this for only a few years, so. But yeah, that's excellent. Well, if there's anything else you'd like to mention, but if not, we'll end the recording here if that's all right.
Yeah, I just like to say
that's okay.
Yeah, carry on.
We can go on for another 2 weeks if that's okay. But we haven't got the time.
Yeah.
I just like to say basically how lucky we are as bird people. We make fantastic friends when you go to bird shows. I've made some very good friends with birds. Like me and Richard, we've been friends nearly 50 years and very good friends. You know, we're lucky to have the birds, especially in nowadays in this climate with the COVID and everything. Gives you something to do, gives you something to focus on. It's a shame we haven't had the shows and so forth, but at least we can carry on with our hobby, where other hobbies can't, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'd like to say as well, we have lost the Norwich family type of thing. I've lost a few people recently. I know Terry from South Wales, he's lost his wife. I'd like to send my condolences. And Colin Wheeler died in Northampton. It's such a shame.
Yeah, that definitely a loss as well to the hobby as well. But yeah, a real shame. A shame there. I don't know the chaps obviously, but either way, it's sad. So condolences to the family and everything there. Right. Well, we'll stop the recording here, chaps. If that's good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So that brings us to the end of episode 2. So I really hope you've enjoyed it. If you have enjoyed it, please make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the future videos of the Natives in Norwich Zoom Room and any of my future videos. If you have enjoyed this video, hit the like button. Please make sure you share this video with someone else who will be interested in the Norwich partnership and any of these other episodes. All of the episodes of the Zoom Room will be in a playlist you'll see at the end of this video. And then to finish off, please hit the notification button. That'll notify you every single time I upload, so you won't miss any of my future videos and you won't miss any more Natives in Norwich Zoom Rooms. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.